March to July 2020 has been a tumultuous time, to say the very least. Hotel conference rooms once full of delegates at live events stand empty, and I, like many in event production and corporate communications, have been on a roller coaster of learning, excitement then despair, followed by more research and enthusiasm, head scratching and repeat. Now though, I feel like I've levelled off at a cruising altitude with an understanding of the direction that live corporate communications needs to take. So what have I learned? Well, ultimately that content is still and always will be king. But without the polished production values and networking opportunities to support it, engagement is at risk. Live corporate communications has, until recently, primarily been about conference-style events, taking a large group of people, sitting them in a dark room together and performing content to them from a stage. But we all know that right now, and certainly as things stand until October at the earliest, getting people together like that is neither permissible nor ethically responsible. And let's face it, an outdoor conference in the United Kingdom at least is pretty weather dependent. So, naturally, the corporate world turned to technologies with which they are already familiar. Video conferencing. Certainly many of the biggest players in this arena evolved from what used to be teleconferencing, and many clients still use teleconferencing on a regular basis until the pandemic hit. And then suddenly video platforms like Zoom hit the headlines and became the byword for a video conference meeting. Of course, video calling has been around for many years already, starting with one-to-one calls like FaceTime and Skype, and evolving into group calls and then conferencing solutions like webinars. Plus, many invested years ago in built-in meeting room systems, touted at the time as the antidote to expensive corporate travel. But what we're finding, though, is that the now prolific video conferencing platforms just aren't really hitting the mark when it comes to the objectives we have for a larger scale event. As soon as participant numbers start to get to sort of 15 and above, it very quickly becomes unwieldy, impractical and impersonal. All the benefits of being able to see each other on screen are gone. The alternative might be a live stream, but that isn't quite right either. Okay, so viewers get to comment in a chat box and the presenter can keep an eye on that and pass comment, but we've entirely lost that benefit of the intimacy of the video call. Alright, so now I'm going to introduce you to a term I thought I'd coined. And then I found out that, rather unsurprisingly, I'm just not that clever, and it has existed for some years already. Interactive broadcasting. Now, I think that the terminology here is important because it neatly summarises the product and critically the calibre of it. Interactive broadcasting, and more specifically live interactive broadcasting, is more than a group video call and more than a live stream. It's a blend of the best bits with professional graphics and mixing, and if social distancing allows, cameras and lighting too. To all intents and purposes, it should look exactly like a live TV broadcast with some fit-for-purpose integrated engagement tools tied in. These broadcast production values are the same level of polish a delegate would expect from a face-to-face event experience. Don't settle for a video conference akin to a visit to a hardware store and a bad DIY job. If event ROI is measured in audience engagement, then production values matter for interactive broadcasting just as they do for face-to-face. But live face-to-face events are far more than just content. What makes a face-to-face event attractive are the spontaneous introductions and conversations between delegates and the handshakes with exhibitors and sponsors. These networking opportunities are, of course, the hardest thing to establish effectively in a digital environment. But this is also the biggest opportunity for something new. Most platforms treat the audience as a blanket whole and only provide interaction between viewers associated with content via a chat box, for example. It's a catch-all opportunity to speak. And as a user, you're nervous about who's reading what you type. The things you might want to whisper to your neighbour during the show may feel too exhibitionist to type out for all to read in a global chat box. The greater the number of onlookers there are, the less likely an individual is to be the first to initiate, well, anything. And this reaction means there is a critical mass for meaningful content engagement. The last thing you want is for your viewing audience to simply become bystanders, observing but not engaging. If we build an environment that divides the audience into subgroups, which are smaller and more realistic in terms of natural conversation sizes, then we really have created analogous conversations to those had between delegates on tables in conference rooms, etc. We can provide environments for exhibitors, sponsors, breakout presentations, workshop groups, and these can happen simultaneously and/or independently. They can even be ad hoc between individual delegates. Interactive broadcasting within these digital environments allows for a fully synchronous dialogue and changes the audience from being passive consumers to becoming part of the content itself, otherwise known as participatory viewing. This is exactly what we're always aiming to achieve in onstage face-to-face live events. But this evolution doesn't mean that face-to-face events are about to become obsolete. Not at all. Just look at how e-commerce changed retail. There was a period of fear when retailers thought there was no future for bricks and mortar. Then they realised that they simply needed to join the online party, adding additional interfaces for the consumer to explore their products. And those who resisted in providing an internet shopping experience are the ones who got left out in the cold. The same thing happened to publishing. There was the fear that digital books would kill off print, but the e-book and audiobook formats have turned out to be new revenue streams for the medium, supporting print. Live interactive broadcasts presented within digital environments, neatly summarised as digital live events or DLEs, will have a similar effect on the events industry once we fully evolve and emerge from this radical period of COVID-enforced transformation. What's happening isn't about pivoting to anything. Events aren't being replaced by digital alternatives. It's simply a new communications channel that will take a share in our events arena and can both exist in isolation in its own right, just like an internet store, as well as form part of the engagement toolkit of a face-to-face live event. It's about embracing this new channel for revenue, if your event is profit-making, and exploiting the opportunities for engagement it can create way beyond that of those who are physically present in the room on a given day. And the best bit is that we've no need to even innovate here. The technology to make these experiences possible is already out there. The differentiator is how we put them all together and make that experience feel as polished as a commercially produced broadcast. So once our whole face-to-face events world is back up and running, and it will be sooner or later, even if it doesn't feel like it right now, I predict that interactive broadcasting in digital environments, or DLEs, will become an integral part of the provision, in the same way as having a registration website is now. The future of face-to-face events will be more like live studio audience TV shows, with an additional remote audience able to take an active, collaborative part in the event, interacting with presenters, exhibitors, and fellow delegates alike. So, think about what you might have cancelled or postponed. Your audience could be missing some critical communications and networking opportunities because the events programme is on hold. There may be a proportion of your workforce furloughed, and maybe others feeling isolated, perhaps working from home. Or maybe you've shelved your B2C events and you feel as though your customer engagement is slipping away. Ock Yoo Icks can help. We can spark all those interactions and communications back into life. We have the relationships and collaborations with developers, creatives, live production specialists in every field, and the network of even more professionals beyond that. Together, we can bring a whole new dimension to your live communication strategy. We'll bring the expertise, creative and innovation to your events, providing professional standards of production to live. This is the start of a new era for events, and I really want to be a part of it.